At dawn, Jerusalem glows gold. The first rays of sun slip through narrow alleys, brushing domes and rooftops as if waking the city with care. Vendors lift their shutters. The smell of fresh bread drifts through the stone arches, and pilgrims, thousands of them, make their way toward a single heart that beats beneath four quarters. Christian, Muslim, Jewish, and Armenian. This is the Old City, barely 1 square kilometer wide, yet it contains 3 millennia of faith, struggle, and yearning. Here, history doesn't lie beneath your feet. It presses against your skin. Every stone whispers a prayer. Every prayer leaves a trace of dust. In the Jewish quarter, the alleys open into a vast plaza, where a wall rises, massive, silent, and eternal. The Western Wall, or Hakotel, is what remains of the Second Temple, destroyed nearly 2,000 years ago. For Jews around the world, this is the closest one can stand to the Holy of Holies, the heart of ancient worship. Watch as men and women press their palms against the limestone, their foreheads resting on history itself. Tiny notes, folded with trembling hands, fill the cracks, whispers to God, layered through generations. Some come to cry, others to thank, all to feel. And when the wind passes through the plaza, carrying the low hum of Hebrew prayers, it sounds less like mourning and more like endurance. Just a few turns away, within the Christian quarter, another pilgrimage unfolds. Here, inside a sprawling basilica, faith takes form in candlelight. This is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where many believe Jesus was crucified, buried, and rose again. The air is heavy with incense. Every breath feels sacred. Pilgrims kneel beside a slab of reddish stone, the stone of anointing, believed to be where Christ's body was prepared for burial. Even after centuries, they say it still carries the scent of myrrh and rose oil. You can see it on their faces, the mix of awe and disbelief, as they touch the stone with scarves, rosaries, even photographs of loved ones. Above them, ancient lamps flicker like stars that refuse to fade. The church is a maze of faith: Greek, Armenian, Latin, Coptic, all claiming corners of the same miracle. Voices rise in prayer, each in a different tongue, yet somehow in harmony. It feels less like a building and more like the world's heartbeat under a single dome. Climb higher, to the Temple Mount, or Haram al-Sharif, and you'll see Jerusalem from above. Olive trees line the courtyard. Sunlight dances on tiles the color of the sea. At its center stands the Dome of the Rock, its golden roof blazing beneath the sky. Here, Islam's third holiest site marks the spot from which the Prophet Muhammad is believed to have ascended to heaven. For Muslims, this place is both history and promise, a link between earth and the divine. Beside it, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, dark-domed and solemn, opens its gates to worshippers who bow in silent rhythm. The sound of their prayers rolls through the courtyard like waves. Few cities hold so much holiness in such tight embrace. From one rooftop, you can see three worlds kneeling, each to the same God, yet each in its own way. The distance between them is measured not in meters, but in centuries of hope and hurt. Yet Jerusalem is not only sacred, it's alive. Walk through the old city market, and the holiness gives way to human chaos. Spices spill in pyramids of color, copper lamps glint in the sun, and the smell of cardamom and grilled bread fills the air. Merchants call out in Arabic, Hebrew, Armenian, English, languages twisting together like threads of one long story. A rabbi hurries past a nun. A soldier buys pomegranates from a Palestinian boy. Here, faith coexists with life. Imperfect, noisy, real. In the evening, when the heat fades and the city softens, Jerusalem becomes quieter, almost tender. The call to prayer echoes from the minarets, answered by church bells and the hum of Friday candles being lit. It's as if the city itself is exhaling, a single sigh shared by millions. Jerusalem is not a destination. It's a collision of worlds. It belongs to everyone who believes and to no one who can claim it. Its walls divide and embrace. Its stones remember and forgive. Stand here long enough, and you begin to understand. This city is not just where faith was born. It's where faith keeps learning how to live. Beyond the city's golden walls, the desert calls. Vast, silent, eternal. And so our journey continues. Here, silence is not empty. It's ancient. Every gust carries the breath of prophets, rebels, and monks who sought meaning in the wilderness. In these caves, shepherds once tossed a stone and heard history echo back. What they found were scrolls sealed in clay jars, hidden for 2 millennia. The Dead Sea Scrolls, fragments of faith, written by a forgotten community that called itself the Sons of Light. Some say the scrolls were a message to the future, preserved until the world was ready to read them again. Further south rises Masada, King Herod's palace turned into a fortress of defiance. In 73 CE, Jewish rebels made their last stand here against Rome. When defeat became certain, they chose death over surrender. Their story still stirs the winds that circle these walls, a cry of freedom carved into stone. Archaeologists found food stores still sealed, as if waiting for a battle that never came. But not all the desert is dry. A few miles away lies Ein Gedi, a burst of green against endless beige. Here, King David once hid from Saul, drinking from the springs that still flow today. Ibexes climb the cliffs as they did thousands of years ago, and the air smells of salt, acacia, and survival. The Judean desert is a paradox, barren yet alive, silent yet filled with voices from the past. It's where belief was written in scrolls, tested by fire, and renewed in water. But even silence ends. Beyond these cliffs, the waters glisten, the lowest point on earth, where life begins again. Here the earth sinks lower than anywhere else, 430 meters below sea level. No waves, no birds, no sound but the wind. The Dead Sea, a mirror of salt and light, where the horizon seems to hold its breath. In these waters, nothing sinks, not even your thoughts. The salt content is nearly 10 times higher than the oceans, making the body buoyant, suspended between sky and stone. To float here is to defy gravity, to rest in the silence of the world's deepest basin. At this depth, the air is thick and heavy, oxygen-rich, but too dense for birds to fly. The sea lives without life. Ancient trade routes etched in sand, caravans recreated through animation or archival images, jars of balm and minerals being packed. Long before tourists and spas, this sea was a kingdom's treasure. From its depths came bitumen for Egyptian mummification and salts for trade, black gold carried by caravans along the King's Highway. Cleopatra herself was said to bathe in these minerals, calling them the secret to eternal youth. Some say her beauty was not born of Egypt's Nile, but of this silent salt water, nature's own elixir. People covered in black mineral mud, laughter mixing with the sound of water. Modern wellness spas on the shores of Ain Bokek. Today the Dead Sea draws pilgrims of another kind, those seeking healing. Its mineral mud soothes the skin, eases pain, and renews. For centuries, this place has been medicine for body and soul, where every grain of salt tells a story of survival. Canyons leading to salt pillars, one shaped like a woman, Lot's wife. Time-lapse of sunset turning the water copper and rose. The Bible speaks of cities turned to salt, of a woman who looked back and became a pillar of stone. Here, the landscape remembers. Salt pillars rise like ghosts, reminders of an ancient judgment frozen in light. Locals say that when the wind is still, you can hear the sea hum, the earth's lowest song. Night falls, stars shimmer above still waters. Reflections blur the line between earth and sky. The Dead Sea is not dead. It breathes through its silence, a mirror for all who come to it. It teaches balance between life and desolation, healing and loss, beauty and decay. Dawn over the water. A lone traveler follows the Jordan River north, camera gliding above its winding path. Follow the Jordan north, and you'll find water that once parted for a prophet. A river that still carries faith downstream. Aerial shots tracing the Jordan's path through golden reeds. Early morning light glints off the water. White-robed pilgrims stand waist-deep, ripples widening around them. Here begins the river of transformation, the Jordan. It has seen prophets cross its currents. Kings wash away sins, and millions seek renewal in its sacred flow. In this narrow ribbon of water, faith finds form. Soft sunlight through trees, priests blessing pilgrims, hands cupping water, birds circling overhead. At Yardenit, near the Sea of Galilee, the faithful arrive from every corner of the world. Some kneel in silence, others sing as they enter the river, believing they are touching the same waters where John baptized Jesus. The air trembles with prayer, quiet, timeless, endless. Locals say if you listen closely, the current hums with every vow whispered into it. Ruins of basalt houses, sunlight over ancient synagogues, fishermen mending nets by the shore. North of the river lies Capernaum, the humble fishing town that became the center of a revolution in faith. Here, Jesus preached in stone courtyards, healed the sick, and called fishermen to follow him. The echoes of those days cling to the basalt walls, dark, rough, yet filled with light. The air smells of salt and olive wood. The lake shimmers like polished glass, hiding its miracles beneath. A soft breeze through wildflowers. Panoramic view of the lake. Pilgrims reading verses aloud. On this hillside overlooking the Sea of Galilee, he spoke of mercy, peace, and humility. The Beatitudes, words carried by the wind still echoing after 2,000 years. It is said that each gust that brushes the grass here carries a blessing. When fog rolls over the slope at dawn, locals call it the breath of the sermon, a sign that the words are being spoken again. Fishing boats cutting through mist, waves rising under sudden wind, sun setting behind the Golan Hills. The Sea of Galilee is not truly a sea, but a freshwater lake, deep, calm, yet prone to sudden storms. Here, fishermen once feared the waves that could turn violent without warning. The Gospel tells of one such night, when the wind howled and the waves rose high, until a voice said, "Peace, be still." Since then, some say the waves still whisper that voice when storms cross the lake. Old sailors claim to hear murmurs beneath the water, the voices of the disciples, still rowing against the storm. City lights reflecting on the water, bustling markets, ancient hot springs steaming under moonlight. Tiberias, built by Romans, cherished by pilgrims, a place of healing and hospitality. Its hot springs have soothed travelers for centuries, while the lake feeds both body and spirit. Here, faith becomes everyday life. A fisherman's dawn, a family's prayer, a stranger's blessing. Night settles over the Sea of Galilee. Stars ripple on the surface like lanterns. The Jordan begins in the heights and ends in the depths. A river that mirrors life itself. It cleanses, nourishes, and connects. From baptism to storm, from silence to song, every drop carries a story of rebirth. From water to stone. Northward, history hides in ruins older than empires. The road climbs higher into the Galilee, where clouds cling to mountaintops and the air hums with unseen presence. This is Safed, city of mystics, dreamers, and light. Narrow cobblestone alleys, doorways painted in every shade of blue, candles flickering in ancient courtyards. Legend says every door here is painted blue to keep away the evil eye, or to remind the soul of heaven. Safed feels suspended between worlds, part mountain, part miracle. Its silence isn't empty, it listens. The scent of beeswax and cedar drifts through the streets. Somewhere, a violin plays a Hasidic melody, as if the stones themselves remember. Old synagogues lit by oil lamps, manuscripts spread across wooden tables. Scholars murmuring prayers. In the 16th century, after exile and wandering, Jewish mystics came here seeking divine understanding. They believed Safed's thin air brought them closer to the eternal. Here, Rabbi Isaac Luria, the Ari, taught that creation itself began with light withdrawing, so the world could be made. Every human act, he said, helps restore that shattered light. It's said that when Ari walked through Safed's alleys, the wind would rise, as if the mountains themselves listened to his words. Painters at work in sunlit studios, stained glass windows, silver jewelry engraved with Hebrew letters. Centuries later, artists replaced mystics, but the search for light never left. They say the air hears hymners because angels pass through it. Painters chase that shimmer, trying to capture the invisible. Every stroke of blue and gold feels like prayer made visible. Even the city's shadows seem gentle. Locals say it's because they, too, were touched by light. Dawn from Mount Meron, clouds rolling below the summit, ancient tombs scattered on the slopes. Beyond Safed lies Mount Meron, resting place of sages. On certain nights, thousands come here carrying candles and songs, climbing the mountain in pilgrimage. They believe the souls of the righteous gather here, whispering blessings into the mist. The higher one climbs, the thinner the air, and the stronger the feeling that heaven is not far. Evening settles. The sky turns violet. Lamps flicker in blue windows, and smoke rises like incense. Safed is not a city you simply visit, it envelops you. Every wall, every shadow holds a story of yearning, for understanding, for closeness, for light. In its silence, you begin to hear your own heart echo. The mist begins to part, revealing valleys below, lush and green, dotted with vineyards and orchards. Down the slopes of Galilee, the land grows green, vineyards, orchards, and the whisper of history. High on the hills of Galilee lies Nazareth, small, sunlit, alive with voices and church bells. Once a quiet village of stonemasons and shepherds, it became one of the most sacred names in history. Here, faith took its first breath. They say that in these streets where olive trees lean over limestone walls, a young woman once heard an angel speak. "Rejoice, Mary," the angel said, "for you have found favor with God." And with that greeting, the story that would change the world began. Nazareth still holds that hush, as if the air remembers the moment when eternity entered an ordinary home. At the heart of the city stands the Basilica of the Annunciation, a towering sanctuary built over the site where Gabriel's message is said to have been delivered. Inside, nations from across the world have offered their depictions of Mary, each one different, each one reflecting their culture's vision of grace. Some show her with eyes like the desert night, others with robes the color of sunrise. Together they form a mosaic of devotion, the world gathered under one roof. Pilgrims kneel by the grotto below the altar, where stone meets silence. They whisper prayers of hope and gratitude. And sometimes tears fall onto the same ground where Mary once stood. Nazareth teaches that faith begins not in power or grandeur, but in quiet acceptance. From Nazareth, the path winds south through valleys and olive groves, the same road that Joseph and Mary once took. It's a journey of faith and fatigue, of dust and determination. And then the hills open, revealing Bethlehem, the city of David. Today it hums with life, vendors calling, children playing, bells ringing from church towers. But beneath it all lies a timeless stillness, waiting in stone and candlelight. At the center of Bethlehem stands one of the oldest churches in the world, the Church of the Nativity. Built over a cave, it marks the place where, according to tradition, Jesus was born. The entrance is small, so low that everyone, from pilgrim to patriarch, must bow to enter. Inside, the air is thick with centuries of incense and song. Underneath the altar, a silver star marks the exact spot of the Nativity. Its surface has been worn smooth by the touch of millions of hands, proof of how many have come, seeking connection with that night long ago. They say that if you close your eyes here, you can almost hear it. A mother's lullaby, the faint rustle of straw, the heartbeat of hope. Nazareth and Bethlehem, Two small towns bound by a single story. One where a promise was made, the other where it was fulfilled. Together, they remind us that faith often begins in the humblest of places, in a whisper, a journey, a manger. Even today, the people of these towns live among relics of the sacred, yet their lives are as ordinary as anyone's. Market traders, shepherds, students, families. But ask them, and they'll tell you, the divine is still here. Not in miracles, but in the kindness of strangers, the laughter of children, and the patience of prayer. Beneath the altar in Bethlehem, the silver star bears a Latin inscription. Here Jesus Christ was born of the Virgin Mary. It has been polished by centuries of devotion, its edges softened by fingertips that came from every corner of the world. They say no one touches the star without leaving something behind, a prayer, a question, a piece of themselves. In Nazareth, a promise was spoken. In Bethlehem, that promise took form. Between them lies the road every believer walks, from faith to fulfillment, from hope to light. The bells ring across both cities, mingling in the distance. And as their echoes fade into the hills, you realize this isn't just the story of one faith. It's the story of humanity's endless search for meaning, born again in every heart that dares to believe. The Mediterranean has always been more than a sea. It is a storyteller. Its tides have carried prophets, pirates, pilgrims, and poets to the same golden shores. Here, the land breathes salt and legend, and every wave seems to whisper an arrival. From Jaffa to Acre, and onward to Caesarea, the coast is a living harbor of human history, a meeting point where east greets west, and faith meets fortune. Before Tel Aviv's skyline rose from the sand, there was Jaffa, one of the oldest ports in the world. Its stones remember Egyptians, Phoenicians, and the fleets of King Solomon. This was the port through which the cedars of Lebanon were shipped to build the first temple. Centuries later, pilgrims from across Europe landed here, kissing the earth before their long walk to Jerusalem. But Jaffa's story is not just biblical, it's mythical. Locals point to a rock formation just offshore and whisper that it's where Andromeda was chained, until Perseus came to her rescue. And according to Scripture, it was from Jaffa that Jonah set sail, fleeing his divine calling, only to meet the storm that would lead to the belly of the whale. Today, fishermen still cast their nets beside those same rocks, and their prayers rise with the sea breeze, as if echoing Jonah's repentance. Further north lies Caesarea, a city built by ambition and marble. Herod the Great, Rome's appointed king of Judea, carved this port out of sand and sea to honor Caesar Augustus. He built harbors that rivaled Alexandria, amphitheaters that sang with gladiators, and aqueducts that still stand like ribs of stone along the shoreline. In its time, Caesarea was the jewel of the Roman East, a place where merchants traded spices and silk, and where philosophers debated under marble colonnades. But history here is layered with faith too. It was in Caesarea that the Apostle Peter baptized the Roman centurion Cornelius, the first Gentile convert to Christianity, marking a turning point in the faith's journey beyond Judaism. Later, early Christian scholars like Origen and Eusebius would walk these same stones, their writings shaping theology for centuries to come. Now, Caesarea lies in graceful ruin. Waves lap against the ancient hippodrome, where chariots once thundered, and sunlight filters through broken arches. It feels as though time itself has taken a deep breath and paused, leaving beauty in its silence. Northward still, Where the Mediterranean bends like a silver blade, lies Acre, or Akko, as locals call it. This walled city was once the last stronghold of the Crusaders before they were driven from the Holy Land. Its underground tunnels and vaulted halls still hum with echoes of their chants, a choir long dissolved into sea mist. Beneath its streets, a labyrinth of stone leads to secret chambers where knights once prayed before battle, believing themselves guardians of God's kingdom on earth. But Acre is more than a relic of conquest. It's a city that learned to survive by adapting. Ottomans, Mamluks, and British armies each left their mark, layering faith upon faith, culture upon culture. Today, its narrow alleys are lined with spice stalls, call to prayer blending with church bells. And if you walk along the old harbor at sunset, when the waves strike the Crusader walls just right, locals say you can still hear the faint echo of Latin hymns carried by the wind. Every port along this coast is a threshold, a place where journeys begin and end. The sea here has been both giver and taker. It brought prophets to safety and armies to siege. It carried letters of love and decrees of exile. The Mediterranean remembers everything. It remembers Jonah's trembling heart, the Crusaders' desperate prayers, and the merchants who once called it Mare Nostrum, our sea. Even now, as cargo ships replace caravels, its rhythm remains the same, the eternal coming and going of souls seeking destiny. Modern cities have grown around these ancient ports, but their spirits endure. Jaffa's old stones now house art galleries. Acre's fortress walls welcome pilgrims and tourists alike. Caesarea's amphitheater hosts concerts where once gladiators roared, music rising again from the same arena, this time in peace. And still, as the sun sinks into the sea, gold light catches the ruins and the waves alike, making it impossible to tell which is older, the sea's song or the human longing to belong beside it. From the salt and sound of the coast, the land rises. The air grows heavier with history and human tension, stories of faith and fire. Beyond the coast, the hills rise again, and the air thickens with history and tension. Long before empires rose and fell, before kings carved borders into maps, Hebron already stood. It is said to be one of the world's oldest continuously inhabited cities. A place where time folds into itself, where yesterday never fully leaves. Nestled in the Judean hills, its streets wind through millennia of prayer, promise, and pain. Here, every stone bears witness. Every breath feels ancient. To walk through Hebron is to step into a story that refuses to end. A story of faith shared by billions and land divided by belief. At the heart of Hebron rises a fortress-like structure of limestone and devotion. The Tomb of the Patriarchs, or Al-Haram al-Ibrahimi in Arabic. It is said to be the resting place of Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Leah. The patriarchs and matriarchs of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam alike. Few sites in the world embody unity and division so starkly. For Jews, it is Ma'arat HaMachpelah, the Cave of the Patriarchs, the second holiest site after the Temple Mount. For Muslims, it is the sanctuary of Prophet Ibrahim, the friend of God. For Christians, it is the root of covenantal faith, where Abraham's obedience shaped the moral spine of monotheism itself. Inside, the air trembles with reverence. Marble cenotaphs rest under arches of stone, their green and gold coverings embroidered with verses of praise. In one chamber, the Hebrew prayers rise in low, rhythmic murmurs. Across a partition, the Muslim call to prayer answers them. Between them, an uneasy silence, sacred and strained, binds the faithful together, even in separation. Step outside the shrine, and the holiness gives way to humanity. Hebron's old city market winds through narrow alleys shaded by old arches and corrugated roofs. Here, the scent of fresh bread and coffee mingles with the clang of metalwork and the cries of shopkeepers calling out prices. Once, this was the heartbeat of Hebron, a place where Muslims and Jews traded side by side, their children playing together in the same stone courtyards. Today, that heartbeat is fractured. Barbed wire and checkpoints carve through the old lanes, and above the market, netting hangs to catch the debris occasionally thrown from windows above, a quiet reminder of tension suspended between lives. Yet, even amid this fragility, life persists. Hebron's story cannot be told without Abraham. Ibrahim al-Khalil, the friend of God. It was here, according to tradition, that he purchased the cave of Machpelah as a burial site for his wife Sarah, the first recorded land transaction in the Bible. That act of faith, buying ground for a promise not yet fulfilled, became a cornerstone for 3 religions. But Abraham's legacy is not one of conquest, it is of trust. He believed without seeing, obeyed without certainty, and welcomed strangers with open arms. Virtues often forgotten in the conflict his memory now witnesses. Standing at his tomb, one cannot help but wonder, what would Abraham think of the walls built in his name? Would he weep for his children, still divided by the inheritance of belief? Or would he smile, seeing that even through division, the call to faith has never fallen silent? Hebron is not a museum. It breathes, argues, worships, and endures. Streets carry both pilgrims and patrols. Its silence is interrupted by both prayers and protests. There are days when the muezzin's call rises over the rooftops, joined by church bells from afar, a momentary harmony that transcends all walls. And then there are days when the air tightens and fear settles like dust over the alleys. Yet beneath it all, the hills hold memory, not just of what divides, but of what began here. A belief in one God, one covenant, one shared humanity. In that sense, Hebron is less a city and more a mirror, reflecting the best and worst of faith, the weight and wonder of history. Few cities have carried their past so stubbornly into the present. Archaeologists uncover Canaanite pottery near modern doorsteps. Shepherds lead their flocks past ancient walls. Pilgrims still arrive, heads bowed, whispering the same prayers uttered thousands of years ago. The city changes hands, rulers, and names, but never its purpose. Hebron remains what it has always been, a meeting ground between heaven's promise and earth's endurance. The story of Tel Aviv begins not with ancient stone, but with sand, endless, shifting dunes by the Mediterranean. In 1909, 66 Jewish families stood here, drawing lots with seashells to divide the land. There was no city yet, only wind, sea, and hope. A century later, that wind carries music from open cafes, the sea hums against a skyline of glass and light. And hope has turned into movement, constant, restless, alive. Tel Aviv is not an ancient city, but it feels like the future is built on ancient bones. It is the pulse of modern Israel, young, creative, definitely awake. If Jerusalem prays, Tel Aviv dances. And somewhere between the two, the spirit of the land finds its balance. The heart of Tel Aviv glows white beneath the sun. The White City, as it's called, is home to over 4,000 Bauhaus-style buildings, more than anywhere else on Earth. They were designed by German Jewish architects who fled Europe in the 1930s, bringing with them a vision of modern simplicity. Flat roofs, curved balconies, open windows, light and function over ornament. Today, these buildings form a UNESCO World Heritage Site, not just for their beauty, but for what they represent. Rebirth through design, refuge turned into creativity. Walk through Rothschild Boulevard, and you can still feel that blend of tragedy and renewal. The survivors who arrived with nothing, but rebuilt an identity from concrete and courage. It's architecture that breathes resilience, a city that built itself from exile. Tel Aviv never really sleeps. By day, it hums with innovation, startups rising in glass towers, engineers coding over espresso, dreamers sketching ideas that reach Silicon Valley. They call it the Startup Nation, and Tel Aviv is its beating heart. By night, the same energy shifts. Guitars along the beach, laughter from rooftop bars, waves rolling under moonlight, as people from 100 nations meet on the same sand. This is the city where religion takes a pause and individuality takes center stage. You'll find markets bursting with color. Carmel Market, where the air smells of citrus and za'atar. And street artists turn crumbling walls into galleries of defiance and hope. The Hebrew, Arabic, English, and Russian voices merge into a single urban melody, messy, human, and utterly magnetic. But Tel Aviv's story cannot exist without Jaffa, its ancient twin. Older than Rome and mentioned in Egyptian scrolls, Jaffa was once the gateway of the Mediterranean. The port where Jonah is said to have set sail before being swallowed by the great fish. Here, orange groves once made the city famous, their fragrance drifting across the coast. Today, its cobbled alleys host art studios, mosques, churches, and cafes where Jewish and Arab families sit side by side, sharing hummus, coffee, and conversation. It is a delicate coexistence. Sometimes peaceful, sometimes strained, but real nonetheless. Jaffa and Tel Aviv are not opposites, they are mirrors. One ancient and weathered, the other restless and new. Together they tell a single story, that the past and future of this land must learn to breathe the same air. In the towers of Tel Aviv, the future hums in every corner. AI startups, biotech labs, and sustainable energy pioneers redefining what's possible. Yet amid all this innovation, there's a constant question. What does it mean to be modern in a land so ancient? Young Israelis here live between contradictions. Military service and beach volleyball. Prayer and protest, identity and freedom. The cafes become debating halls. The beaches become stages for expression. This is not a city that hides its tensions. It thrives on them. The graffiti that splashes across Tel Aviv's walls isn't vandalism, it's voice. It says, "We are still becoming." Every brushstroke, every mural is a declaration that this country's story is still being written. In pixels, in poems, in paint, Tel Aviv's energy is contagious. But beneath it, there's also reflection. The city knows that peace is fragile, that every moment of celebration carries a shadow of uncertainty. Still, it chooses joy. It chooses movement. It chooses light. Along the promenade, you'll find elderly couples walking at sunset, their grandchildren running ahead toward the waves. The sea, indifferent and eternal, reflects the same horizon seen by sailors thousands of years ago, only now framed by skyscrapers instead of sails. In that reflection lies Tel Aviv's truth. This is not a city trying to escape its past. It is a city that dares to live beyond it. But the story doesn't end here. It returns to where all prayers meet. Dawn. The first light touches Galilee, painting the water silver and gold. Fishermen push their boats into quiet ripples, the same waters that once reflected miracles. The wind carries the scent of earth, olives, and history. Far away, in Jerusalem, bells ring through narrow streets. Pilgrims move through stone corridors, candles flickering against walls that have seen too many tears to count. Each step is a prayer, each whisper a remembrance. In Bethlehem, a mother hums to her child. In Nazareth, the markets awaken, colors, voices, spices blending into music. In Hebron, the muezzin's call rises with the morning sun, echoing off homes built atop the bones of millennia. And by the coast, Tel Aviv stirs. Surfboards and laptops, laughter and ambition. The city hums with caffeine and possibility. Life continues, relentless, beautiful, fragile. This land never sleeps. When one city rests, another wakes. When prayers end in one tongue, they begin in another. It is a land of endless rhythm, of faiths that collide and coexist, of stories that refuse to fade. Every stone here carries memory. Some are worn smooth by hands that reach for heaven. Others still bear the cracks of war. Yet, between those stones, life insists. Children playing soccer in alleys, doves circling minarets, vines curling over ruins. The night falls over the hills of Judea. Jerusalem glows like a constellation of candles. Gaza's shoreline flickers with lights against the sea. The desert, quiet and infinite, guards the memories of prophets. And the Dead Sea, still and ancient, mirrors the stars, as if heaven itself leans closer to listen. In this land, time does not move forward. It circles, like the doves above the dome, like the pilgrims who always return. You can leave it, but it never leaves you. Because here, faith is not a monument. It's not even a story. It's a heartbeat, persistent, fragile, eternal. And as dawn breaks once more over Galilee, the land exhales, tired, hopeful, alive. The journey never really ends. It simply continues, with every step taken upon this sacred soil. In this land, every stone has a story, every dawn a prayer. The journey never ends, because here, faith is not a place, it's a heartbeat. But what do you think?